That was really something. So a song like that reminds you that we're all connected. It reminds you of something greater than we are normally willing to perceive, that we are normally willing to let in to our hearts and our minds. It reminds me that this connection that we have is so much greater than you could ever imagine. It's so beyond our ability to conceptualize. It has to be an experience. To paint with the colors of the wind, to sing with all of the music of the mountains. Those are beautiful images and pictures that plant something in your mind, right? That you have an ability, that you have a potential, that you have spiritual power. But that power is not able to be recognized by you in isolation. It's not able to be demonstrated by us when we are in isolation, when we are experiencing separation, when we are acting as if we are powerful within our egoic identification, our personality that is separate from every other personality. So this is the thing that needs to occur before we can actually paint with the colors of the wind in our consciousness, is that we need to become aware. We need to become aware of our own consciousness in connection with everything else. Because separate consciousness, or let's say individual consciousness, is essentially irrelevant until the point where you come in contact with everything else and you maintain your awareness of your oneness with everything else. Have you ever heard the word Ubuntu? Yeah, a lot of you have. It's an African term. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu uses that word a lot to describe his philosophy of being on earth with others. And it means I am a being because of you. That we are a being together. That I exist because of you. Because of we. We is Ubuntu. I don't exist apart from you. I don't exist apart from that tree. I don't exist apart from that rain. I don't exist apart from the water. I don't exist apart from the ocean. I do not exist apart from any of this. The only way I can have life and exist at all is because of you. Is because we are together. And because of the earth and everything in the earth. So today I'm going to attempt to help us to come back into a recognition of our oneness. I want to help us to widen our circle of compassion. I want to explore what Albert Einstein called the optical delusion of consciousness and the proposition that our freedom lies in widening our circle of compassion. We're going to seek this experience of oneness, which comes from letting go of the illusion that we are separate. And it comes from an inclusion of all living things into our heart and our mind. Inclusion. That's what we're looking for. That's what keeps us aware of our own power, because our power exists in relation to everything else. So I'd like to demonstrate also why I believe that unity has the perfect solution to the problem of separation. So first, let's look at where we find ourselves. Scientifically, Albert Einstein says a human being is part of a whole, called by us universe. But we perceive ourselves as a part limited in time and space. That's how we perceive ourselves. And then a human being experiences himself, his thoughts, his feelings as something separate from the rest. Does that strike a bell with anybody? Does that ring a bell? Does that strike a chord? You're feeling like you're separate from everything because of your thoughts and your feelings. You think you're the only one having them. And so this creates a kind of optical delusion of consciousness, where you see yourself separate from everything else. And somehow you're trying to figure out what everything is, when everything is actually you. Everything's already you. Everything's God. Everything's light. Everything's the same thing. But we see it as different. And so what happens is we become afraid. This is what happens in this optical delusion of consciousness. According to Albert Einstein, this delusion becomes a prison for us. And it restricts us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest us. Yeah, so okay, I love my friends, I love my family, but I forgot all about Ukraine already. I forgot all about Syria. I forgot all about people starving in Libya, Yemen, all those places. Those are people just like you. Ethiopia. Those are just names and places to you that are separate from the few persons that you have affection for or your own personal desires. Why? Because you're caught in the optical delusion of your consciousness. So the compassion is gone from there. What happens is that we just want to protect this person and these few people that I feel affection for and my personal desires and my personal things. That's what I'm protecting. Everything else, it's out of my awareness now. It's out of my consciousness. Why? Because it becomes too painful to let it into your consciousness. So the spiritual path is not for the faint of heart. Compassion is not for the faint of heart. It's for strong people who are willing to forgive and who are willing to say, I want to be released from this prison that I've created for myself through my optical delusion of consciousness. So the next thing that happens is that we can free ourselves. Here's the solution. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty. Isn't that wonderful? That's the solution. That's the solution. Amen. Amen, says Dolores DeLuz, civil rights icon of Cape Cod. I saw you last week speaking over there at the Federated Church in Hyannis. Dolores, thank you for being here today, who's been working, most of her life in an attempt to demonstrate that we are one, that we are all the same, and that love that exists in her exists in you as well. And so that's why we're here today, to free ourselves from this self-imposed prison of separation. Carl Sagan, another guy that I really like, says compassion is our only mechanism for moving beyond us and them. We've got a great movement today of us and them, of grabbing fear as a way to motivate people and to monetize certain things. Fear has become an incredible commodity in the world today. And it's pretty incredible because it's going to take a lot of courage to say no to fear. Because what it does is create an us and them. And so to have compassion for those who you used to be afraid of or you used to be angry with takes a lot of courage. People who you used to really think, if they could only go away, if I could only get them to think like me, if I could only change their mind. Well, it's not about that. It's about changing our minds. Seeing the light in them, like I said last week, and treating them as if that's all we see. Pretty soon, you become a mirror for that person. And it's all they see is the light in them. I've got some great stories about that, but it would take all day to tell you them. All I can tell you is that this works. It's called forgiveness. It's called joining with your brothers and sisters. No matter how they're showing up, Because only an ego can judge another ego. But when you're walking as the Christ, you will see the Christ wherever you go. Somebody's nodding their head saying, it works. That's what I'm doing. It works. I'm committed to doing that. And it may take some time. You know, let's break it down a little. Let's unpack this. How are we going to do this? We're a part of a universe. We're connected to everything. We're dependent on everything. So the first step is to realize that I'm dependent on the whole. Every part of it. When I am intrinsically connected to you, you're going to feel that energy. I don't have to say any words. You're going to feel it. We feel that energy. That vibration becomes a very powerful thing. And in that light, all fear disappears. So that's the first part, is to eliminate your fear through forgiveness. That's how that works. Eliminate your fear through forgiveness, through joining with the others. Do not assume that that's going to happen the other way around. Because we often want to say, if they change, then I'll be fine. Right? No. This is what has to change. Okay. So we can't exist apart from everything else. In fact, if you look on an energetic level, there are really no separate parts. Everything's connected. It's a scientific fact that everyone and everything is connected. And everything is intrinsically one. That's just a fact. I've been reading this wonderful little book from Myrtle Fillmore. It's called How to Let God Help You. It's one of the Unity classics. I want to read a little, since we're talking about how scientists think, let's talk about how a spiritual leader thinks. Myrtle Fillmore is the co-founder with her husband Charles of the Unity movement. And she says, we are studying spiritual science. And we're doing this to get a broader conception of God, rather than holding the view that God is a personal being with parts like a man. A being subject to change and capable of varying moods. Though personal to each one of us, God is it. Neither male nor female, but principle. But not a cold, senseless principle, but the principle of life, of love, and intelligence. God is all intelligence. There is but one mind, and in reality, there are no separate men and women. A full realization of this great truth would do away with all selfishness, the cause of all misery on this earth. This has been taught in Unity from Charles and Myrtle Fillmore since the 1890s. This is not even though we call it new thought, it's not a new thought. It's been around a long time. But it will be a new thought to you because it will be the first time you're actually using it to do away with the selfishness in you. And guess what? Since we're all connected, there's no limit to the scope of our awareness. There's no limit to the scope of our influence energetically. And so I know that whatever is happening with me is also occurring in all of creation. Now this is going to bring us to something very philosophical, because if something is happening in me that is dark and negative and angry and violent, that's temporary. But that's something that I must deal with. Each individual will come to the point where he or she has had enough of that judgment. Has had enough of that optical delusion of consciousness. And so, if that's an inevitability, that I will come back to truth, then I should do that now. I have the opportunity to do it now. And not worry about when you're going to do it, because we're doing it together. And time is irrelevant at that point. Isn't that amazing? Because time is part of the optical delusion. And that's a whole nother message. That's probably a workshop. So in reality, there are no separate men and women. This great truth, realized by you individually, does away with all the cause of the misery in this world. So our task remains to free ourselves from this self-imposed delusion of consciousness that we call separation. So this is great because Einstein's not just pointing out the problem, he's pointing out the solution. He's offering the solution to us as well. And the solution is to widen our circles of compassion, to include all living things, all of nature as we perceive it. Everything that we perceive is separate from ourselves. Now this, may seem like a very daunting task or very philosophical proposition. I can't actually, perform in the world, but that's not true. You can perform it starting with yourself. Lily's been studying something, my wife Lily. Shout out to Lily out there. We love you, Lily! Something called self-compassion. There's a wonderful woman named Kristen Neff, which is teaching something called self-compassion. And it's very different from self-esteem. Because self-esteem, you always have to measure yourself against something or someone else. Right? So there's always this kind of measurement going on. Am I good enough? Am I at the highest percentile? Am I the smartest? Am I the best looking? Am I this? And so your self-esteem is coming from what? Judgment. It's coming from factors you perceive outside of yourself. It's coming from you being better than somebody. Self-compassion is the complete opposite. It's accepting yourself the way you are. I am enough. I have God potential. I have the Christ light within me. No matter how I've showed up this morning, that Christ light is growing in me. And it's perfect. And you're perfect just the way you are. Yes. And you give yourself room to grow and make mistakes. You give yourself room to be more than enough, but to be that perfect expression of God that you are. So self-compassion is great because once you learn that, you're going to have compassion for others. So start with yourself. When you forgive yourself, you'll be able to forgive others more easily. And that will widen to your family, your friends, your community, and of course, the whole world. Automatically. You don't actually have to travel to another country in order to bless them. Because we are already one. And I'm blessing them now in the realization of my own divine nature. So in our shared humanity, that's where we find our shared divinity. You know what? I love this because that was my last page. And I know at least one person here that's going to be happy that I kept it under 20 minutes today. So I want to end with this. This is also from the book, How to Let God Help You. But it's from Charles and Myrtle's granddaughter, Rosemary. She wrote the introduction to this book. And it's why unity is so important. Oh, and there she is up on the slide. I love it. Unity's mission in our world is to help people release those fears and hurts that bind and confine so that we may experience and express the love that we are. That's Unity's mission. And that should be our mission individually. So she goes on to talk about unity as a mystical quality, not just an organization. The mystical loving light that we call unity is universal. It is that in us that sees beyond what seems to be into what is real and true. It knows no special religion. It has no national boundary, no cultural division. It is the unity that flows from the heart of the universe to heal and bless our world. And that's the unity that we are expressing here at Unity on Cape Cod. The unity that comes from the heart of the universe to heal and bless us and our world. So go out this week, my friends, and share that unity with everyone. Remember that you are blessed. And so remember to be a blessing to all that you meet. We love you. Amen.
You have been watching the message from our Sunday celebration service here at Unity on Cape Cod, providing a positive path for spiritual living. Please join us every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. at 147 Walton Ave, Hyannis, Mass., and visit us online at unityoncapecod.org. This video was made possible in part through a grant from Unity Worldwide Ministries and the Templeton Foundation.